Jackson had always been told that the Zephyrians' tales were sacred. During his 3 months aboard the interspecies research vessel Harmony, he'd watched the cat-like aliens carefully navigate around each other, ensuring their flowing, fur-covered tails never made contact with anyone outside their immediate family. It was their most fundamental cultural taboo, one that could result in exile or worse. But as he watched Lily's unconscious form dangling over the reactor core's emergency exhaust vent, cultural sensitivity became a luxury he couldn't afford. The accident had happened so fast. One moment, Lily had been adjusting the quantum resonance calibrators on level 7, her silver-blue tail swishing with concentration as she worked. The next, the artificial gravity generator had malfunctioned, sending her tumbling through the maintenance hatch and into the reactor chamber's danger zone. Jackson pressed himself against the observation window, his human heart hammering as he watched her limp body caught on a jutting piece of conduit, suspended 15 feet above the vent that would open in less than 2 minutes to release superheated plasma. The emergency protocols were automatic, no override possible once initiated. "Lily!" he shouted into his communicator, but she remained motionless. A thin trickle of purple blood ran from her temple, where she'd struck the metal during her fall. The other crew members were trapped on the upper decks by emergency bulkheads. The ship's AI had sealed all sections to prevent catastrophic damage from the gravity malfunction. Jackson was alone with an impossible choice: follow protocol and wait for rescue teams that wouldn't arrive in time, or break the most sacred law of an entire species. He'd studied human history enough to know that sometimes the right choice was also the hardest one. Jackson cycled through the airlock into the reactor chamber, his emergency suit's cooling systems already working overtime against the rising heat. The vent would open in 90 seconds. Lily stirred slightly, her golden eyes fluttering open just enough to see him approaching. "Jackson, no," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the reactor's growing hum. "Cannot touch—" "I know," he said, pulling himself along the maintenance rails toward her position. "I'm sorry, Lily, but I won't let you die for a rule." Her eyes widened in horror, not at the approaching death but at what he was about to do. "My people will never forgive exile." Jackson reached the conduit where she hung, her tail the only thing he could safely grab to pull her to the emergency ladder. Every instinct told him to find another way, but the vent's warning lights were already flashing yellow. 60 seconds. "Then they'll exile both of us," he said, wrapping his gloved hands around her tail. The reaction was immediate and profound. Lily's entire body went rigid, her fur standing on end as if electrified. Her tail was incredibly soft despite its alien origin, warm even through his suit's gloves, and he could feel her rapid pulse through the appendage. What surprised him most was the way her distress seemed to flow through the contact. He could actually sense her fear, her shame, her gratitude all mixing together in a way that felt almost telepathic. With careful strength, he pulled her toward the ladder, using her tail as a lifeline. She was surprisingly light in the reduced gravity, but every second felt like an eternity as he fought against the heat and her cultural conditioning that made her want to pull away. 30 seconds. They reached the ladder just as the vent's lights turned red. Jackson hauled them both up and through the emergency hatch as the chamber below erupted in a controlled burst of plasma that would have vaporized anything in its path. They collapsed together on the corridor floor, both breathing heavily. Lily immediately curled her tail protectively around herself, her golden eyes filled with a mixture of trauma and wonder. "You touched it," she whispered. "You actually touched it." Jackson pulled off his helmet, running a hand through his sweat-dampened hair. "I'm sorry. I know what it means to your people." "But I couldn't—" "No," Lily interrupted, sitting up slowly. She winced from her head injury, but managed to focus on him with startling intensity. "Do you know what you did?" "What you felt." Jackson thought about that strange moment of connection, the way her emotions had seemed to flow through him. "I felt you, your feelings." Lily's ears twitched, a sign of amazement among her species. "Humans are not supposed to be able to do that. Our tails are, how do you say, neural interfaces, sacred because they allow us to share thoughts and emotions with chosen family. No outsider has ever been able to connect through touch." The implications hit Jackson like a physical blow. "You mean, you saved my life by breaking our most sacred law," Lily said, slowly extending her tail toward him. "But in doing so, you proved that some bonds transcend species. Some connections are worth breaking rules for." Jackson stared at the offered appendage, understanding the magnitude of what she was proposing. Your people. We'll have to accept that sometimes an outsider can become family, Lily said firmly. And that humanity's greatest strength isn't their technology or their weapons. It's their willingness to risk everything for others, even when it costs them dearly. Jackson carefully took her tail in his hands again, feeling that same warm connection flow between them. This time, though, it carried not fear and desperation, but gratitude, friendship, and the beginning of an understanding that would change everything between their species. Sometimes the most important rules weren't the ones written in books. They were the ones written in the heart, demanding that you save a friend no matter the cost. And sometimes breaking the rules was exactly what the universe needed.